Welcome back to All Texas Football. Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. We will be taking you through the rest of your evening, entertaining, informing you, and otherwise keeping you occupied on this Wednesday night in the off season. We've got some recruiting tidbits. I know, CJ, you want to get to here at the top.
Yeah.
The combine invite list came out. We'll get to that. Texas women's basketball in action. CJ, I know you were also at the Jim Schlossnagel availability today. Got baseball starting on Friday. A lot of stuff happening on the 40 acres right now. But want to thank everybody for hanging out, your participation, even if you're just watching or listening. We appreciate it. We'll take your questions. As always, super chats jump to the front of the line. CJ, let's go ahead and get started with some recruiting tidbits. We got a 2028 quarterback offer and a big-time official visit set up from a local prospect. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as we all know, quarterback offers under Steve Sarkisian, they kind of get put into a different category. Anytime one is extended, our immediate sensors kind of start getting alerted. You start wondering what the situation is. Well, Texas just actually extended a new 2028 offer to Graham Simpson. Simpson, familiar last name. He is the younger brother of Ty Simpson. So there you have it. Ty Simpson, obviously the quarterback over at Alabama. Texas offers his younger brother, Jeff, who put up some pretty insane numbers this year. He helped lead Westfield over in Tennessee to a 14-0 record. They won a state championship. And I wanted to read real quick what his numbers were in that state championship game. Again, he's only about 5'11 and a half, about 185 pounds. But for a state championship game, how about 18 of 21, 566 passing yards? He threw 7 touchdowns, which tied the title game record. On top of that, he had a 99-yard pass. He had 3 rushes for 46 yards and a touchdown as well. That's pretty darn impressive. So, look, he's going into his junior year. Holds 22 offers. Alabama, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, all in the mix at the moment. Oklahoma and North Carolina have also extended. Now Texas Longhorns and Steve Sarkisian have thrown their hat into the ring for Graham Simpson as well.
And let's talk about the visit from a local prospect. We talked about receivers a little bit on the recruiting breakdown this week. By the way, if you haven't checked out the recruiting breakdown this week, that's myself and CJ and Jerry Hamilton do that each and every Tuesday that drops. Talked a little bit about wide receiver and kind of how it was going to shake out. And that first weekend of officials in June is setting up to we could get some wide receiver clarity that weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we know Easton Royal is coming in June 19th, but that first weekend is going to be Jeremiah Douglas out of Crandall and Trey Moore out of Pflugerville-Weiss, who ended up setting his official visit to Austin this morning. So, look, you have already a bit of a jump start on your wide receiver class for the class of 2026. Now it's about figuring out 2027. Now it's about figuring out who else in that conversation do you believe to be a fit. But Texas getting 2 in-state kids on that first weekend. On top of that, look, there are some other really interesting names. Joaquin Gouda, linebacker out of Douglasville, Georgia, announced today that he's visiting on the 12th for an official visit. I reported yesterday as well he would be coming in on March 10th for an unofficial. Texas, of course, kicks off spring football on the 9th, so he's getting on campus basically immediately to see Texas in person. He's got already a number of big-time official visits set up. He's going to Florida week 1. He'll be at Texas week 2. And then another one, Zach Fair is a tight end. I know Texas is still working on getting Brock Williams from Libertyville, Illinois, in on an official visit. Zach Fairs is an interesting name, a new name. He set up an official visit for the 3rd weekend, Jeff. That will be June 19th. He'll be coming in with Easton Royal and Greedy James.
I like the fact, and Texas has had more of a presence in the Southeast, kind of the SEC footprint under Sark, and it's part of your conference territory now, so you need to have a presence there. But the addition of Jabbar Jalouk, at least, helping you kind of have a home base, somebody that just really knows Metro New Orleans and Louisiana, having somebody like that on your staff. I always love having a guy like that on staff because, man, Louisiana is still one of those places where you can go into some pockets that LSU either doesn't have time to, doesn't want to, and you can find really good players. But, man, hiring Will Muschamp allows you to not just stay in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. CJ, it gives you a hell of a presence there because what we talked about, big difference between Will Muschamp and PK in terms of recruiting, in terms of how's it's going to impact recruiting. It's night and day because PK didn't go out on the road, and Will Muschamp just loves being out on the road.
Right. No, of course, that's huge, right? It's always massive when the head coach, the play caller, a coordinator, it comes to your school. Recruits believe in that. Of course, we've been in the recruiting business for a while. That means something to them. When the guy who will be setting the play calls or the schemes up comes and personally sees you to kind of build that relationship and that trust, that means something. And Muschamp, I think so far from what we've seen, Jeff, I think he enjoys it, right? He didn't do a lot of it while he was at Georgia, obviously being on an analyst role. Now back at Texas with the DC title. We've seen him out in California. We've seen him, deep in Georgia. He's been out to the East Coast and the Carolinas and Virginias. I think he's waited a little bit, and he's, kind of longed to be back out there. Now to see him back, of course, on the road seeing recruits, I think that's huge. One guy we need to mention as well, Honor Faalele Johnson out of San Diego. Muschamp went to see him January 15th. He will be on campus March 28th. This is a top 20 prospect, the number one safety in the country. Texas is trying to make inroads there on the West Coast. And to your point, Muschamp's a guy that's already starting to establish that early relationship.
No doubt. So, hey, make sure you get over to ontexasfootball.com. Anytime we get news, notes, or nuggets on the recruiting front, CJ and Jerry are dropping those over on the website. So we got a running list of official visits as they get set up and scheduled. CJ, real quick, again, go through that first weekend. You mentioned the receivers, the two receivers, Jeremiah Douglas and then Trey Moore got his today. Cameron Hall, the defensive end, the edge commit out of Mansfield Summit. And then Peyton Miller, who to me is about as important as any offensive prospect on the board in the 27 cycle, just because of his ability to potentially play center at the college level. I just think anytime you can get one of those guys, hey, I'm all for it. And offensive line, like quarterback, it's still one of the few positions where, guys might hang out a little bit longer just because of the nature of the position because they know they need some time to develop. So, that first weekend, we're seeing Texas kind of move it up a little bit, which I don't mind at all, be a little more proactive and get some guys spread it out a little bit. It's interesting with those 4 weekends, CJ. There's no we talked about this too. The temptation, I think, would be, hey, just load up these visit weekends, get as many guys as you can, because with your roster expanding to 105, you'll be able to take more guys. But at the same time, you don't want to make it to where you're overloading it so much that a guy that you really like ends up leaving campus feeling like, man, staff doesn't really care about me because I was here all weekend and they didn't really give me the time of day.
No, that's a great point. And again, that's kind of what we're seeing now is Texas starting to spread apart some of those official visits. And what I mean by that is typically what we've seen for Texas is you get the last 2 weekends on the official visit month, right? You normally get that third and that fourth visit. You kind of want to have the last impression before the dead period starts in July, and then leave these kids a lot to think about before they make a July or August decision. Well, now we're seeing that spread out, as we just talked about. Already 4 prospects in that June 5th window, 3 in June 12th, 3 already in June 19th. And we know Texas is going to be active that final weekend once again, but it gets you a leg up when it comes to these kids going on 4 or 5 consecutive official visit weekends. Now they don't feel worn down towards the back end. They're fresh, they're energetic, they're excited to be on a new campus. And Texas right now pivoting a little bit more to that front end of the month of June. And I'm going to be eager to see, Jeff, because right now you look at it, you have 2 commits in that June 19th window. You have 4 in-state kids on that June 5th window. And you got a couple of kids from the out-of-state filtering in from June 12th to June 26th. We'll see how kind of the themes are built, to your point about not being too lopsided or too heavy one way or the other.
No doubt. We got a couple questions in the chat, CJ, a couple recruiting questions, so we'll get to them. Todd Lacey says, status update regarding the interior D-line top recruit committed to Tech. That's Jalen Brewster. I got to say upheaval, maybe a little unrest with Zarnell Fitch, the D-line coach, not going to be back in Lubbock for the 2026 season. That was an early commitment, CJ. Anything you're hearing scuttlebutt-wise on Jalen Brewster?
Look, I think it was going to be a fight for Tech to hold on to him all the way through, right? This is a 5-star level guy for now. We'll see where he ends up ultimately. But at the same time, Tech got in early, and Tech, as we've known, they'll play the big boy ball, especially in the trenches. But anytime your position coach departs and you have to build a brand new relationship from scratch, essentially, it's going to take a hit to your commitment or your recruitment to one school or the other. So look, I'm sure Texas will be involved. I'm sure everybody in the region will be involved. But Texas is in on a number of other defensive linemen, specifically from Georgia, from Florida, from Mississippi, as we've seen in the past. They're not going to be pigeonholed to just what we've seen in the in-state. So we'll also see how he recovers from, I believe, his off-season shoulder surgery. That, of course, is really interesting for guys that play in the trenches. Shoulder surgery, to me, Jeff, is kind of one of those, I don't want to say red flags, but it's, you got to see how they, fully recover and how quickly they're able to do exactly that.
It's fair to call it a beige flag.
Yeah.
Because, I've seen some, there's surgery's not a one size fits all deal, man. I've seen some defensive linemen get the shoulder cleanup and be fine, maybe even better afterwards.
Yeah.
And then you get some guys, way back in the day, Texas took a guy to Denton Guyler, Taylor Bible, really, really talented interior D line, had a couple shoulder cleanups in high school and was just never really the same. Never got the strength back that he lost as a result of missing some offseason. So you just never really know. So it's fair to call it a beige flag, CJ, I think at this point. Pedro Horns, John Meredith news, ? Really, really talented corner. I got to get used to saying North Crowley now.
Yeah.
I want to say Euless Trinity, but he is at North Crowley. And then we'll stay in the secondary real quick, CJ, because Champ Bailey 3 asked, any chance Texas can flip Jaquan Snell?
Yeah, no, two really talented prospects, probably, the two best at their positions in the state of Texas this year. I don't have anything new on John Meredith, but I do think Texas is probably in a sneakier position than many would assume, right? Earlier on, it was, I'm not sure how involved how receptive he would be to Texas. Come to find out, I believe that Texas is going to be right there in the thick of things. If not, I'll put it out there, Jeff, they might be the leader at the moment. I'll put that very loosely at the moment, but we'll see, of course. But for Jaquan Snell, look, out of Waxahachie, currently committed to Texas A&M. He, again, the top 50 player in the country, one of the top 10 in the state, currently committed to A&M. That's going to be a little bit tougher in my eyes. I think he's going to be one of those kids who you look back on and just you say, hey, he just didn't like Austin, the city, the hustle and bustle. I think he likes, obviously, some of the the parallels from College Station to that of Waxahachie. I think he also likes Norman quite a bit. So where is Texas going to fall in the mix? I know that I know Sark and company had an in-home with him during the back end of January. Is anything changing? I don't know yet, but right now I know Texas is behind by a bit of a margin there.
Yeah. Texas has had these guys too. Every cycle, if you're a recruiting big dog, and let's face it, man, from whether anybody wants to admit it or not, A&M is, from a recruiting standpoint, they'll mix it up with some blue chips. Every school like that, I feel like, has at least one guy per recruiting cycle that you're worried, oh man, is he going to take visits or whatever? And then you get to the end of the cycle, he's like, yeah, never really thought about going anywhere else. Just stuck with my commitment. Just really liked it here. And like, everybody's worried the whole time about nothing. So, maybe Easton Royal's that guy for Texas.
That would be huge.
CJ, I would like that very much. We'll get back to your questions. We got to talk about combine invites, but right now I want to thank one of our sponsors. As a matter of fact, it's our lead sponsor here on the Wednesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Are you stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? Just give Andy a call. He'll walk you through a process to help you find a business that's going to fit your skill set and fit your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't something that's for everybody, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. We want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here on Texas Football. All right, CJ, let's get to the combine invites. Those went out today. 7 Longhorns headed to the NFL scouting combine. Let's get the good out of the way first.
Yeah.
what grabbed you the most? We'll get to the snub in a minute, and there is a notable one, but the guys that are headed to Indy, what grabbed you the most in terms of that group that's headed there?
Yeah, I think it's 3 defensive backs, right? It's Michael Taff, it's Malik Muhammad, and hey, Jalen Gilbo gets a nod, right? And I think that's very encouraging, right? Because we saw it towards the back end. He didn't play as much as what we saw in the front half. He fell from about 60 to 70 snaps, all of them being at an outside corner spot, to about 30. And then he played 20 against Arkansas. And I think he got hurt against Texas A&M, and we didn't see him, obviously, against Michigan in the bowl game because he opted out. But that slow decline, I think, was a concern for me. So for NFL teams to view him as a potential late round pick or an undrafted free agent, this at least gives him one more opportunity to go out there and perform very well in front of scouts and executives. Because Jeff, I know that we talk about it, we follow it with, Rod Babers loves the draft, right? And we talk about it all we can. Anytime we get one of these Senior Bowls or the Shrine Bowls, we always follow it to see what kind of goes on. It sounded like Gilbo was playing well, performing well in the Shrine Bowl. So the Combine should be one more opportunity, and that would be a huge notch for Texas when it comes to a Meredith or a Jaquan Snell.
Mine is DJ Campbell, and to an extent Trey Moore too, but more so DJ Campbell because, and I say this in a good way, he can make things really confusing for a lot of front offices and draft rooms, because I think he could have the kind of combine where he just tests really well and everything checks out and he checks a bunch of boxes, and teams have to go, man, we need to go look at the film again, because he's a better athlete, a better looking prospect than a lot of interior offensive linemen we've got on the board. And you mentioned, I'll give you credit for this, because we've all praised DJ Campbell, I think you did the best job of pointing out, he got to a point as a senior where the baseline just kind of leveled out, and you got to a point where week in, week out, you knew what you were going to get from DJ Campbell. Now, that didn't help the offensive line situation because it was kind of a mess from jump. You got competent by the end of the year, but I think for him, he hit that baseline. You get to get to a point in your career where you can be counted on as kind of a floor setter on your side of the ball, where, hey, we know at the bare minimum, this is what we're going to get from this guy. And it's not erratic anymore like it was at other points in his career. I think that'll help him. I think teams are going to have a tough time looking at how he'll test and what it's going to look like in Indianapolis compared to what the tape from 23 and 24 is going to show.
I think that's a good point. And we talked about it a little bit with Anthony Hill when it comes to impressing or final impressions before the draft. Let's not forget the kids that have some of these 5-star pedigrees, they come in with, kind of that freak label. And DJ Campbell, let's not forget, was the number 1 interior offensive lineman back in 2022. I think that starts to resurface more and more. And when we talk about it with Anthony Hill, a lot of the conversation is, well, was there meat left on the bone when it came to how he produced and how he was used? But knowing the physical traits, can NFL teams get more out of him if they use him differently? I think DJ Campbell could be a guy like that as well. Just knowing that he's probably going to test very well. He moves very well in space. He has the athleticism. We also saw how well he played, Jeff, when he dropped from 340 to about 325. Or was he too big in 2023 and 2024? That's another conversation. So that's something I'm looking forward to. So I think that's a great pick as well.
From that standpoint, it mirrors Jordan Whittington a little bit, because if you look at Jay Witt's career, he stopped having injury issues to me when he cut some weight. Like I just felt like there was a point in Jordan Whittington's career where he got too big. Yeah, he was wound too tight, and that's when he was still having some soft tissue injuries. He even talked about that, I think, going into his last year at Texas. Like, yeah, he kind of did some things different and leaned up a little bit, and he was on the field more because he was able to stay healthy. I think for DJ Campbell, it was, yeah, you're big, and that's one of the pluses, but you probably got too big. I know I'm going to talk about somebody's weight, but yeah, he was a much better football player, about 20 pounds lighter. And I think the teams will see that. And I again, to me, with him, and I think Trey Moore's like this too, because Trey Moore, I understood what the staff was doing with him this year. Like, you want to try to increase his value by showing, hey, he can play multiple positions. Man, I think at the end of the day, he's just a really good edge rusher and a situational edge rusher in the league, CJ, who, man, on third down, if you tell him, hey, all you got to do here is just pin your ears back and get up the field now for the quarterback, he can do that, I think, at a really steady clip and at a pretty high level and have an impact. I think both those guys, when you get into that day 3 mix, for especially the 5th and 6th round, man, at that point, just you take a flyer on a guy that, hey, this guy was an all SEC interior offensive lineman who was a 5-star prospect in high school. Let's see what we can get out of him if we need to bring in a guard or pass rusher was a need. Hey, this guy's got proven production, not just at UTSA, but he did it for 2 years in the SEC. So let's bring him in, see if he can rush the passer. At that point, I just think those guys have enough. I've used this term a lot, and I'm going to probably overuse it by the time we get to the draft. Those guys are going to check enough boxes, at least by the time you get to the 4th or 5th round, that they're just going to be too good a value to pass up.
Yes, look, Trey Moore was really interesting. I know that we've talked about it, and I hope moving forward when you get some of those, I don't want to call them tweeners, but that's kind of what they are, that, not necessarily a middle backer. You see obviously the pass rushing ability, but maybe not lengthy enough or long enough to play that edge full time. Brad Spence comes to mind. Kosi Okpala comes to mind, right? He's a guy who going forward is fantastic, but is he a guy that can drop back as a middle backer? And is he long enough, or, is he basically filled out enough to play that edge full time? You just don't know yet. They get the title of being a designated pass rusher. And, I think in some NFL circles, draft scouts, they see that it might be a bit of a scaring moment for them because, well, are you going to take a guy who you can only put on the field on 3rd downs with a premium draft spot? And I think Trey Moore kind of falls into that category. And it's been unfortunate because, to your point, he joined Texas off of a 14.5 sack season.
Yeah.
There's not many guys in all the country, regardless of level that they're playing, that have 14 sacks in their entire career. He did that in 1 year, and towards the back end of 2024 especially, his numbers were fantastic, right? He had the strip sack against A&M to seal that deal. He had 7 sacks over the last 6 games, 3 forced fumbles. He was all over the place, and it felt like he figured it out. And going into 25, Texas said, new role for you. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all.
Yeah, I felt they kind of – like I said, I got what they were doing, but I just felt like with Anthony Hill, Trey Moore, and Colin Simmons, all 3 of those guys, you kind of overcooked your bacon a little bit. Like you got outside the box, but there's a reason what you're asking those guys to do was outside the box because you took away a little bit of what all 3 of those guys did best, which was getting downhill and being aggressive and getting after the quarterback. And again, you start looking at data points, man. Well, why did Sark move on from PK? I think that's one, like you got to the end of the year and you're like, man, as the sack numbers were great and the pressure numbers ended up being what you needed to be, but you still left meat on the bone. Yeah. Like you still could have been better. And your point about Trey Moore, by the end of 2024, he was so good. Like, he actually was too good in the SEC championship game because he knocked Carson Beck out of the game. If Carson Beck stays in that game, Texas probably wins the SEC.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're probably right, but that's more of the conversation to, hey, I think something clicked in him.
Yeah.
And he was working his tail off. He looked fantastic opposite of Colin Simmons, and that led to more of the conversation this year. And I know the sack numbers were very much a positive for Texas. But at times it still felt like, hey, if it's not Colin Simmons creating all of that havoc off the edge, are you getting what you need consistently? And it felt like Trey Moore could have been an option for you.
So, trust me, a Texas fan will run into a Georgia fan one day down the road and be like, hey, who's your favorite player to play for Texas? And the Georgia fan will say, hey, Trey Moore. Trey Moore's random. Why? He ended Carson Beck. He got the Gunnar Stockton era and Georgia started in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I agree.
Another guy who was really good rushing the passer at Texas, and Ethan Burke, not invited to the combine. Every year it seems like there's one where I don't get it. The one that stands out over the years, when Poona Ford didn't get invited to the combine, I was like, dude, there's teams that just can miss the boat on him because he's a damn good football player. You get so caught up in, like a guy like Poona, you get so caught up in what he's not that you completely miss what he is.
Yeah.
And he's had a damn good career in the NFL. But CJ, I don't know. The Ethan Burke snub makes 0 sense to me.
I don't get it. I mean, what more are you looking for when it comes to, basically the prerequisites to be invited to the combine? 52 career games, 17 career starts, 26.5 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks. He has 3 blocked kicks. He has a pick 6, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. You tell me, Jeff, when it comes to a 6'6" edge rusher that's 260 pounds, what more do you need to see on the tape or in the stat sheet that leads you to think this guy could be an NFL prospect?
And played his best in the biggest games on your schedule, like the A&M games and the SEC championship and the postseason. Like, he was at his best when you needed him to be at his best.
Agree.
Like, I just, again, like I talked about the value with Trey Moore and DJ Campbell. Day 3, it's not going to be what we've seen the last couple of drafts be. Man, day 3 is going to be a really big day for a lot of these guys because somebody's going to see the value, everything you just laid out, man. Like, this guy did it for 2 years in the SEC and 1 year in the Big 12. But even you look at that year in the Big 12, CJ in 23, like the game at Alabama, like that might have been the best game he played that year.
I agree.
It felt like it was. So that's it. He's just going to be too good a value to pass up. The special teams aspect of it is going to help. And I think I'd hesitate to say this about DJ Campbell, and it sounds like a knock, but I don't mean it to be one. But like Ethan Burke, I really do feel like he's got his best football ahead of him. Like he hasn't hit his ceiling. I feel like DJ Campbell, there's still another level he can get to, but I feel like Ethan Burke, man, we haven't seen the best of him yet.
And that's another thing is when you look at some of the athletic traits of kids whenever they come to the combine, how do you not fall in love with a kid that was a 6'6" All-American lacrosse prospect committed to one of the best lacrosse programs in all the country in high school, right? That feels like untapped potential or athleticism in there, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as the combine nears, but that's something that I look at and say, I'd like to see how he tests to see if he stacks up with other elite edge rushers. And I'll throw this at you, and I want to get your thoughts here because I feel like having seen some of the conversation over at OTF and obviously online as well, no one's really mentioned Cole Brevard, and I thought that was interesting. Yeah, again, a guy that's 345, 350 pounds. He's played 300 plus snaps in 4 straight years as a nose. That is a tough thing to find. I was a bit surprised that there was no invite for him as well.
Yeah, Champ Bailey 3 said, really not trying to trash Gilbo, but how does he get invited over Burke? Some of this is just some of the position groups end up being more stacked than others. So that could have – it still doesn't excuse Ethan Burke not getting an invite, but I think that helps explain it because it's not like Jalen Gilbo was picked over Ethan Burke or anything like that. It's just the way some position groups work out. But with Cole Brevard, again, like the same thing I said about DJ Campbell can apply to Cole Brevard. Like, did it in the Big Ten and then did it in the SEC. Like, that dude's played a ton of football. And, guys like him that are kind of even I say A-gap players, but Texas didn't use him in the A-gap or shaded as a nose as much as probably should have at times. But, though you can't have a room full of those guys.
Sure.
But every NFL team, you need a couple of those guys that just, hey, we're going to throw you in there and we just need you to occupy bodies. Just be you. Be big, be strong, stalemate, let the guys behind you work and clean things up. So, yeah, I think Cole Brevard is going to have some value. We talked about it last night because we got asked, hey, who's the strongest guy on the team in terms of 2016? But if you look at 25, man, Cole Brevard probably had a pretty strong claim to being the strongest guy on this team.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to go out and prove that to the scouts, I'm sure there probably won't be two bigger, attractions to the pro day. Maybe if Arch is playing or throwing, right? But those two specifically will have just about every scout's attention whenever they come to Austin for the pro day.
No doubt. Yeah, I would. Oh, we got a lot of questions, the last few live streams. Hey, is Arch going to throw a pro day? Is Arch going to throw a pro day? I don't know the answer right now, but I would assume, number one, it's going to depend on, hey, where is he with the foot in terms of, does he want to push it or whatever? Because he has to put himself first. He's got to be a little bit selfish. From that standpoint, like you don't want to reactivate that foot injury.
Yeah, he's still in a boot. Let's not forget, like a pretty heavy, big time boot.
Right. But if he's good to go, I have a hard time thinking he wouldn't want to be out there for jack injuries. throwing in the ball just to make sure you max. Because, man, your pro day for a receiver there's so much about the draft process that you don't control. The pro day is the one thing you've got complete control over. That it's on your campus, it's in your facilities. You're designing the route tree. Yeah, there are going to be some things the scouts ask you to do, but you're basically designing the throwing session yourself to kind of showcase what you can do. So I would think if Arch can be out there, I think he would. Cisco Diaz mentions, yeah, you could have KJ Lacey out there throwing it. I mean, if you wanted to, you could have Diabell out there throwing. I don't know, but I think that's the thing in the Arch conversation that doesn't get brought up is, yeah, you've got to worry about, like, not that the foot's going to be a thing that's prolonged, but like you don't want him out there unless he's 100% and he's cleared and he's ready to go. And by the way, I'll say this too, Mitch, talking about the facilities. I'm very happy that this will be the last pro day conducted inside the bubble.
Are you going to miss the bubble?
I will not. How can I put this in a very PG way since we're on YouTube? I will not miss the swampy south end that comes with conducting any kind of business inside the bubble.
I think that's totally fair. That is completely fair. And I'm trying to fix the camera here, fellas. I'm sorry about that, but we got it.
You're good. Burnhorns mentions Matthew Caldwell. Matthew Caldwell could throw the pro day. So you've got options. I just it's great to think about the eyeballs the guys could get if Arch is throwing, because if you're a GM or a head coach that thinks you may be in a position to pick at the top of the draft in 27 and Arch is throwing at pro day, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't go.
Well, it goes back to the conversation when Quinn threw in the spring of 2024. Who was it that was right behind him? There were 2 coaches, 3 head coaches in total. We have Shane Steichen of the Colts, who ended up taking Anthony Richardson that year. And then it was Mike McDaniel. What did he do?
Yeah.
He just ended up taking him in the 7th round, right? So, obviously it hasn't worked out too well for him in Miami. He's off to, other pastures. But point being, it gives you one more opportunity in person to scout, evaluate, maybe get a conversation or two in to learn about the demeanor and the person, and then take your own notes into the war room for the next draft.
D'Amico Ryans was there, I believe, at that pro day. And a guy who
was there.
Yeah, a guy who was there who wasn't a head coach at the time, but Brian Schottenheimer was there watching him throw as well. So, yeah, it's anytime you got a big-time quarterback, it's the most important position in sports for a reason. Like, you can't, if you think you've got a chance to get your guy. That's what I always forget about that, though, that Mike McDaniel was at that pro day where Quinn threw in 24. So, and ends up, like you said, ends up taking him, and we'll see. Hopefully, things work out for Quinn in Miami. Let's thank a couple of more sponsors here on the Wednesday night live stream. Let's give a big shout out to Rogue Shop. I want to thank Rogue Shop for their sponsorship of On Texas Football. Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Rogue Shop does ship nationwide. Make sure you use the promo code On Texas for a special discount. Rogue Shop has it all from oils and creams to flour and gummies. Again, that's rogueshop.com. Use the code On Texas for a special discount. And with the help of a couple of lifetime Longhorns, here's a word from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right. I want to get to there's been a lot of chatter in the chat about this. CJ, were you a fan at all of any work James Vanderbeek did during his career as an actor?
So I had to ask Danny Davis who this was earlier today. I found out, obviously very sad, but no, I don't think so, Jeff.
All right. So there was a time, probably back in middle school, where there were two conversations that would happen in the morning before the bell rang. The boys' conversations was, hey, did you watch Monday Night Raw or Monday Nitro last night? And are you caught up on everything? Did you see that match? Did you see that promo? Whatever it was. And the girls' conversation was, whatever night of the week Dawson Creek came on, it was whatever happened on Dawson's Creek. Okay. So, yeah, James Vanderbeek was a part of that. Also a part, look, some people might clown this movie. You may not like it, whatever. Varsity Blues is a damn good movie. And it's a classic as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So James Vanderbeek played John Moxon, who's a quarterback in Varsity Blues. By the way, several cast members no longer with. Paul Walker was in that movie. Ron Lester played Billy Bob, and now James Vanderbeek. I'm not going to say it mirrors small town high school football in Texas, but there are parts of it. I'll just say there's parts of that movie that hit pretty close to home, fairly accurate. Either stuff I went through or that I've got a version of stuff that happened in that movie that I know happened. So yeah, rest in peace, James Vanderbeek. Varsity Blues, really, really big part of my high school days. Love that movie. Had a great soundtrack too. So yeah, have you seen that, CJ? Have you seen Varsity Blues? I'm gonna guess you haven't.
No, I don't think I have. And
dude, you're killing me.
A lot of folks are going to be mad in the chat because we hear about movies all the time that get brought up, and Jeff, I just watched Lord of the Rings trilogy for the first time last week.
I'm not going to fault you there because I haven't seen any Lord of the Rings movies.
Okay,
so you got one on me for sure.
I'll take that then. Cisco, yeah. I will add it to the list because the list is pretty darn long.
SEC War Daddy. That's an iconic scene. The Allie Larder whipped cream bikini. It's one of those that you don't forget about it. But no, man, that movie, I just freaking loved it so much. And it was filmed in and around the Austin area. West Canaan's home field was the old Borkelbach Stadium at Georgetown, one of my favorite stadiums to watch a football game, which is no longer there. Filmed at Elgin, parts of it filmed at Taylor, a little bit in Hutto, Round Rock. Also, there is a Texas tie to Varsity Blues because it's not like James Vanderbeek and Paul Walker were out there slinging the rock all over the place. Legendary lifetime Longhorn Peter Gardere was one of the stunt doubles as a quarterback for Varsity Blues. So,
no kidding.
Yeah. He's in the credits. So 100%. So, yeah. As CB points out, Top Notch Burgers was also in there. So yeah, it's and yes, CB, the club where they partook in some activities was also a legitimate club. It was in Austin. I have no idea if it's still there or not, but yeah, man, Varsity Blues, you need to watch it, CJ. It doesn't. I don't know if it holds up in 2026 as well as it did when it came out in, was it 98, 99, whenever it came out, but it's up there. So we've talked about some recruiting info that CJ dropped. CJ and Jerry both dropped earlier today over on TexasFootball.com. We talked about the combine invites. CJ, you were at the Jim Schlossnagle availability today. We know the starting rotation for opening weekend. It's going to be Ruger Riojas on Friday, Luke Harrison on Saturday, and Dylan Volantis on Sunday. I haven't heard what Schloss had to say about why they're doing it the way they're doing it to start it out. The names, I think, are probably who we thought it would be. The order's a little bit different. What Schloss have to say about the rotation today?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The names are who we thought. Seeing Dylan Volantis as kind of your Sunday guy, we'll see how long he's in that Sunday spot, Jeff. And I think this is a nice way for Schloss and Max Wiener to get him acclimated to the routine of being a starting pitcher, because as we all know, it's very different when you have your day and everything basically depends on how you start a baseball game. But for Volantis, for Luke Harrison, it was interesting to hear from Schloss as well. Cozart also going to be a starting pitcher for Texas to begin the year. I would assume that's more for some of those midweek games.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him, how do you manage, some of these early games to get young arms involved versus how do you manage whenever it's situationally important, imperative to the game going with guys that you're familiar with. And he goes, well, the hope is that all of these guys at some point dip their toes in really important situations. We're going to need a lot of these arms towards the back end of the year, of course. And, given how we saw 2025 play out, Texas kind of fell flat with the arms late. And I know that the lineup obviously wasn't up to snuff as well. But the point is, when Jared Spencer went down, did you have enough in your bullpen to get through some of those big-time SEC series? I would say no. He says, look, that's kind of where me being a manager and Max Wiener being the pitching coach that he is, we have to kind of collaborate with one another to make sure that we're utilizing these guys properly, as well as getting them valuable experience early on, while knowing that winning the game is obviously the clear objective.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know who the frontline guys are going to be, not just on the weekend starting staff, but you mentioned Sam Kozart, probably the midweek guy. Jason Flores is going to end up playing a big role in this before it's all said and done. In a bullpen, Grubbs and Burns. You've got some power arms, power arm with Burns, and just kind of a crafty veteran with Grubbs. But man, you go up and down that list, CJ. We see it every year. If you're going to get to Omaha, let alone get there with a chance to win it, Cade Bing, Ethan Walker, like Brett Crossan, like you're going to have multiple guys on this staff that they might not, their role might be, hey, in one SEC series where we needed to avoid a sweep, that guy came in and gave you like 4 outs on a Sunday to help you get a win that helped you get a top 8 or whatever it is. Like everybody's going to need, you're going to need every man on that pitching staff is going to need to do something positive in this thing.
I tell you, Hayden LaFew, another young arm that we heard a little bit of praise from Ruger Riojas, Thomas Burns. How about this, Jeff? And I know that we're going to talk about this on Bases Loaded tomorrow, but I loved hearing this and kind of the mentality that both Ruger Riojas and Thomas Burns mentioned today is, in the bullpen, we're basically hired hitmen. And
I like that.
I liked it a lot. And that's kind of what the belief is Max Wiener has instilled in this group is you have one job. It's to go out there and to get 1 guy out, 2 guys out, 3 guys out. And then you go sit down. You go out there to do a very specific job, a job that you're called on to do, and you move on. So don't, get up and fluff about what your role is. If you're not getting enough innings, this is your role. This is how you expand on it. This is how you benefit or help the team essentially. But I loved hearing that from both of them. And that's a new term that I think we're going to hear a lot of this year. And it's certainly a term I'm going to start using a lot of in my everyday life.
I dig it, man. To your point on that, the thing that made that 2021 pitching staff so special, which Texas was good enough to win the whole thing in 2021. You just ran into the team that ended up winning it all with Mississippi State. And you couldn't figure out Will Bednar that year. But the thing that made that team really special was just the mentality that your back end bullpen guys had, because your ability to throw Tanner Witt and or Cole Quintanilla in front of Aaron Nixon, who just one of the most bizarre career arcs I've ever seen for a Texas pitcher. Right? He was as lights out could be as a true freshman, and then never really got it back. But dude, like if you got the ball to your bullpen in the 7th inning with the lead, is pretty much church.
Yeah, it was.
And I think this team, Cal Higgins is another guy that's a hard thrower that's got some experience. Like I think this team's got the ability to have that.
Yeah, and blessed. What is that? 32-205. Bullpen wins games, absolutely. And my hope is it's kind of twofold here, right? One, it's fantastic, and I think it's a bit of a tell anytime your manager or head coach comes out and specifically talks about what he believes to be a strength. And to hear pitching depth as a strength 2 weeks ago, we heard about it a little bit more today. That's a tell. You normally don't hear that too often from coaches who are basically like poker players. They keep everything close to the vest. They don't like to reveal too much. That's a tell. So I've kind of marked that. But on top of that, this lineup should also provide a little bit more of some run support, right? A lot of the big runs Texas scored early on in SEC play, that was just timely clutch hitting, and that doesn't sustain for an entire season. So when that runs out, do you have enough in the tank to get runs across? We saw towards the back end they did not. So hopefully things go well this year.
ARO Kids 27 has made a Big Lebowski reference in the chat, and he's made
I've seen it.
And he's made a Tommy Boy reference in the chat. So you saw the Big Lebowski. You saw
I've seen
it.
the Big Lebowski.
What'd you think?
It's funny. Yeah.
It's awesome. Coen brothers are great. Have you seen Tommy Boy?
I have seen Tommy Boy. My mom sat me down and watched that one back in high school. So
yeah, Mama Vogel knew what she was doing. That's a Chris Farley, David Spade classic. That's a must watch. All right, so good to know on that, CJ. Yeah, so Arrow Kids 27 winning the chat tonight, as far as I'm concerned, with the Big Lebowski reference and a Tommy Boy reference. Let's get to a couple of these super chats, CJ. SEC War Daddy. Jeff, CJ, any thoughts on North Dakota State joining the Mountain West? Will they be eligible for the CFP this season? I hope not. No more charity cases, please. I haven't heard that they're not. You know what's interesting? This kind of falls into the same discussion. Did you happen to see, and I only saw this because I saw, as a Texas State alum, I saw the schedule. Have you seen the Pac-12 football schedules for 2026?
I can't say that I have.
Okay, so the last regular season game, the last conference game, they're going to a flex schedule. It's like a to be determined opponent and site. Like, from what it sounds like, because there's eight football members in the Pac-12.
Right.
It sounds like they'll basically take the top 4 teams, or 4 teams will get a home game, and it's to position presumably whoever's in your first or second place team that has a legit chance to get into the playoff. It's to give them another data point against a quality opponent.
I like that.
Yeah. It's, hey, if you're the Pac-12, that you're gonna be the XFL of of FBS. Just do bits.
Do whatever it takes.
Use the Pac-12 as the tryout ground.
Yeah, shoot. I know you can't change the rules and do funky kickoffs like the XFL, but you got to do something to make your league more relevant, and also maybe be on the cutting edge of something to come across, eventually when it comes to a 2 mega conference sport. But I like that a lot, Jeff.
Yeah, I dig it, man. I've seen some West Coast reporters kind of the league's not really revealing exactly how it's going to work. But man, the fact that we're sitting here on February 11th, and we're talking about Pac-12 football, it proved it served its purpose.
Shoot, no kidding.
As far as North Dakota State and the Mountain West, I think, and again, I know this just from when Texas State did it. Gosh, that was back in 2012. So I can't believe it's been almost 15 years since the FBS move was made. But yes, you are an FCS powerhouse, North Dakota State is, and you're winning national championships. It's the FBS money. That's what you're chasing. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, money, right? So I do think there is still a buffer when it comes to teams that make the jump from the FCS to FBS level, because we saw with James Madison, would they be eligible immediately to play in the playoff? It's a ridiculous rule. I know in college basketball, when teams make the jump, they have like a 2, maybe 3 year period to cool off. And I think it's one of the dumber things in the world to prevent teams from making that jump up in competition, not down, but up, and say that they're not eligible to play in the postseason. It's one of the dumber things I see in college sports.
Yeah, it's not a probationary period, but it's I forget the term they use. And it's not like what people used to say about high schools, where like you're not playing an outlaw schedule. Like you're part of a conference. You just can't win the conference championship or go to a bowl game. And the future of bowl games is something too, CJ. I don't know if you saw the Detroit bowl game that's gone through several different iterations. It's going away.
Yeah, that's fine.
The LA Bowl is gone. Bahamas Bowl has been gone.
That's all right.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, because at some point, like with the bowl games, I know for ESPN, they for them to air it, there's some value it has for ESPN as a television product. But man, if you don't have sponsorship money, there's no point in playing those bowl games.
No, and we're seeing it right now. I mean, bowl games don't mean anything to teams outside of the playoff, right? Notre Dame, Iowa State, Baylor, they all said, hey, we're cool. We're going to move on to the portal window. We're going to move on to our offseason. I think that's what you're going to see a lot of moving forward. Who the hell wants to go play in the cold-ass Fenway Bowl?
That's why I for the G6, I would hope that they would buy into, have your own playoff. You can still get the FBS money, the television money, but man, have your own playoff, because why are you going to have your fans attend a bowl game that the team doesn't even want to be there for?
I've
Like,
never seen anybody rock pinstripe bowl gear.
Yeah, be working towards something. I can tell you, Texas State has won a couple first responder bowls and an armed forces bowl. In my I've got my cabinets here where I keep all my memorabilia stuff. I have no armed forces bowl or first responder bowl gear in those cabinets. I've got some of my bowl gifts, CJ, from over the years.
Yeah.
The one that I kept, I had to throw it away because it leaked, just to kind of remember where we were. The Alamo Bowl, I'm not joking. The one where Texas played Colorado, where it looked like the varsity scrimmage in the JV. Like, Colorado had no business in a postseason game. They gave out bottles of hand sanitizer. That was the bowl gift. Like, we just had a bottle of hand sanitizer. So I kept it, and I was like, yeah, it's kind of a cool reminder. And then, like, it ended up leaking on one of the shelves. Like, I guess I got to throw it away now. So, that's neither here nor there. But that's I do tend to keep random stuff like that. I do. I've done some Texas X's events. They've given me, like, like the metal, like, engraved koozies and stuff like that. I've kept those. But yes, none of that gear. Antoine, I work for On Texas Football. I want Texas to win, because look, if Texas started out 0-1 in 2025, CJ, they started 0-1 in 2026. We're having very different conversations.
Oh boy, yeah, look, I don't want to even think about that right now, Jeff. It's February.
I'm just letting everybody know where my allegiances lie, even though we're this far out. Michael Williams says Montana linebacker is returning for his 9th year playing college football. NCAA.
Time for a job. If you're in college for 9 years, you better have 3 degrees. A couple of them better be some of the more scientific advances in there. You better have some research labs named after you. But you need to have a damn job. You should not be playing football anymore. I know that this kid's had 2 missed years because of a foot, 2 missed years because of a knee. Don't matter to me. If you're as old as me anymore, you shouldn't be in college playing athletics at all. Go get a job.
Man, I thought I was up against it going the Tommy Callahan route. I was in college for 7 years, but dude, that was off and on. And at some point I had to go get a job. Yeah, you can't play college football forever. Like, I don't like, what are we even doing here?
Look, I would love to stay in college forever. It was a great time, but it's time to move on at some point. Luck just didn't go your way. Also, on this conversation, I know a lot of folks are going to tie this to Lawrence Seymour. I've not heard anything yet in terms of where things are with his eligibility request. Obviously, he still has, some of that procedure with the NCAA to make sure that he gets cleared for the 2026 season. I've not yet heard a timeline there or where things stand. That all feels like it, kind of comes and goes as it pleases. And we're still seeing that with Joey Aguilar, Diego Pavia, and a number of other guys, Trinidad Chambliss. So we'll have to wait and see.
And Seymour's only asking for a 1 year, like a 1 year back that he lost. Like, that's all. Like, my man in Montana, he's on his way to being like the Burt Kreischer of college football. Like, dude, at some point you got to machine court, man. I don't know if this guy ended up in, running a pool hall scam with the Russian mafia over a summer, but that's a conversation for another day. CJ, one more time, let's thank our lead sponsor for the Wednesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Do you want control over your own destiny? If you do, then maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that's the case, then just give Andy Ludicky a call. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise that fits your strengths and finances. Again, franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have the desire to take control of your destiny today, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And once again, big thanks to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for their sponsorship of On Texas Football. Antoine points out Joey Aguilar is going for year 8. Like, the thing that's muddy in the water is, like, the NCAA, like, they have no teeth at this point. Like, I don't even know what purpose the NCAA is serving now.
I'm with you. If you're not going to enforce the rules there and just grant everybody who goes to court with you just extra access to eligibility and years, then what's the point? What's the point?
The NCAA has become like the the stoplight camera of the sports. Remember, like we did that whole deal in Texas where like they found out, okay, you can't use like stoplight cameras aren't enforceable anymore.
Yeah, they were an infringement or something.
So what are we like? What are we doing? You're just a prop at this point. Like it doesn't matter. You're just there for. It's even an insult to figureheads to call the NCAA a figurehead of some sort. Like I have no idea.
Good point.
What you're doing at this point. So, yeah, that's where we are. But as CJ said with Lawrence Seymour, there is no update on that front. CJ, anything else from the baseball availability stand out to you today?
No. Let's see. Jonah Williams, TBD if he's in the starting lineup this weekend. But Schloss gave Sark a lot of praise when it came to working with both football and baseball. He's also been working in right field, which is what Schloss called to be one of the tougher positions to play at the dish. Said notoriously this is a tough outfield to play given the wind and how it might change on a day-to-day. Of course, if you've been to the dish recently, you know that right field is a spot that gets hit pretty significantly from that side of the field. But Jonah getting some work in right field. And he said there's a goal right now from the hitter's perspective to chop down on strikeouts for the entire season by 100. He said, look, that sounds lofty, but if you go back and you look at, well, if you play 50, 55 games, that's about 2 a game. So we'll talk about this and more on Bases Loaded. I don't want to get it through and spoil everything, but strikeouts and contact at the plate, big point of emphasis for this year's lineup. And obviously throwing strikes with Max Wiener is always going to be something that you hear a lot about.
And the other thing about right field, Augie used to say right field was the toughest position to play in that park. Like you mentioned, like the wind's a factor, but also depending on what time of day you're playing, the way the sun sets behind the clamshell, it could make, that cause the shadows and it could make the ball really hard to read off the bat. So Augie always said right field was the toughest position to play in that park. And who am I to argue with Augie Garrido about what works and what doesn't at Dish Falk Field? Now we're talking baseball because, we had the combine invite list come out today. We also talked about some recruiting at the top of the show. It's really weird that like we haven't had a sport to talk about because, softball and baseball don't get cranked back up until this weekend. Men's basketball off from Saturday to Saturday, which is really rare.
Very rare
season. And then the women are off and don't play until tomorrow night. They had the Monday game against Kentucky, and then tomorrow they're at Vanderbilt. And that's a quick turnaround, CJ, to go from Thursday in Nashville against a really good Vanderbilt team, and then basically get a travel day to go to Knoxville, and then you play Tennessee on Sunday.
Yeah, it's going to be a good slate. I know that. Look. For both teams, really, men's and women's, this is a huge final stretch for them. And, getting to talk to Sean Miller specifically after the game, Jeff, that was a big win for the Longhorns over Ole Miss. So, look, this is imperative for us to make sure that our legs are fresh. We have 4 road games in the final 7, and then go find out what else we can do to make sure that we're in a position to make the tournament. For Vic Schaefer's squad, it just feels like they win every game.
Yeah.
I mean, they have tied for the most ranked wins in all of the country. This is a good team, and I hope Texas fans are enjoying this run because it's no guarantee ever that you're in a position like this. I know that there's still a lot of work to do, some mountains to climb. Really talented team right now.
The things that Vic has talked about that needed to go right for this team to put themselves in that position have gone right, namely getting Aaliyah Crump back and how valuable she's been as a perimeter presence. And Vic has said kind of leading up to the Kentucky game, hey, if we can get Justice Carlton going, then that's going to make us really, really hard to beat. And she does make them really, really hard to beat when she's playing well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's about as well-rounded a team, CJ, as you'll see in women's college basketball. And then for Sean Miller and the men, just keep finding a way to stack wins. Like at this point, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It's not style points. If you can get to 8 wins, 8 conference wins going into the SEC tournament, I think you'll still be on the right side of the bowl. If you get to 500 in conference play, it's doable now at this point, I don't even think you need a win in the SEC tournament. I think you're in. You go 500 in a power league, I think you're in. That's just period, point blank, end of story. And you're going to have the numbers, whether it's Bart Torvik, Ken Palm, Net, whatever it is, you're going to have those numbers on your side. I want to ask you this because I actually haven't asked you about this, but as we get ready to wind this down, what was the vibe in the building on Saturday? Chris Beard coming back to Moody Center, because I thought it was you could tell for him it was a different game because he ditches the quarter zip that he's been wearing all year, like going with the suit, and I don't know, it just seemed like you could tell it was not the usual Chris Beard energy we're used to seeing. I'm sure in a lot of respects it was awkward, but what was the vibe in the building last Saturday?
Credit to Texas fans in the student section. They showed up, right? So it was, for my first game covering Texas basketball, Jeff, I thought the atmosphere was fantastic. I've been to a few games now. Best environment that I've seen for a men's game as well. Of course, when you have someone like that, leave a program, fans, students, they're going to let them hear it. I thought it was very interesting. It was very interesting. The coaches and the team take the floor before tip-off, right? And for about 4 or 5 minutes, you don't see Beard join them. I'm sure he's sitting back there weathering the storm of what's to come or whatever. But point is, finally, about 5 minutes after the team and the rest of the student managers and the assistant coaches took the floor, finally he took the floor and tip-off was right there trying to sneak out on the court. But it was weird because for the first 15 minutes or so of the game, obviously Texas gets off to a heck of a start. They're up by 18. You don't see Beard standing at all. He's not roaming the sideline. Obviously, with Sean Miller on the other side, you see him basically on the court acting as a sixth defender at times. But I thought he was very subdued for the first half. And then towards the second half, they start getting on a run. And, how do you not get into the competitiveness and heat of the game? But no, it is what it is.
Even what I saw from post game, just almost by the time he got the post, it was almost like relief. They're like, all right, you ripped the Band-Aid off, you got it done. It was for him probably more like a trip to the dentist. Like, it's probably gonna suck, but just do it, get it over with, and everybody can move on afterwards. So it was, I'll tell you what, it was and you were in the building, I was not, but I can almost guarantee you a much better return for Chris Beard to Austin than what he got when he went back to Lubbock.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
3 season. I mean, when you had to have, there was I forget what it was, but I think they had a shoot around and they were going back to the hotel, and tech students had like blocked the bus in, so like they couldn't leave the arena. Like they had to get their police escorts to move people out of the way so they could leave the arena. Like it was. That's one fan base that, man, that's a different kind of man. Some fan bases, their shenanigans are cheeky and fun. Tech fans.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, you go from Tech to Texas, right? There's a factor in that. Texas to Ole Miss. I mean, I'm not sure many Texas fans who care a ton about Ole Miss unless they're still caught up on the 2013, 2014 games. So,
yeah. All right, I think that's going to do it for the Wednesday night live stream. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for his contributions. Thank you everybody that participated in the chat, that hung out, even if you just hung out and listened or watched. We do appreciate it. Thanks everybody that chipped in with the super chats. Big thank you to our sponsors tonight for the Wednesday night live stream. That's Rogue Shop, Advanced Pain Care, and our lead sponsor, Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. If you got any questions, comments, anything you want to get off your chest, make sure you direct it to the guys at Coffee and Football first thing in the morning. I'll say this, I don't want to tease it too much, but schedule, because I learned this in the radio business, CJ. You start teasing stuff, that's usually when you have guests drop off. Should be a really big guest on Coffee and Football Friday morning. I think we got lined up. I don't want to spoil it, but I don't know, we got a couple of days, but should have a big time guest on Coffee and Football on Friday morning. We've got the Thursday night live stream tomorrow night. The Thursday night crew is led by Rod Babers. You got lifetime Longhorn Marcus Myers and our resident coach Bob Shipley on the live stream tomorrow.
Also, also be sure to go check out JT Karachi interview with the OTF crew that just released as well. So get to learn a little bit more about the newest Texas tight end commit as well.
Absolutely. And make sure you get over to ontexasfootball.com. Any news, notes, and nuggets that we get, we're dropping it there first. The forum has gotten more lively, so make sure you get over there and check out everything that we've got going on over at ontexasfootball.com. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, anytime we go live or we drop content, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage all year round. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.